The agenda this week examined the incidence of violence against healthcare workers in the province, got advice on how nutrition can boost brain health, and stacked up food fads against food science. The agenda's Week in Review begins casting a critical eye towards our leaders on Parliament Hill. Shachi Kurl is going to join us now. She is the executive director of the Angus Reid Institute. She joins us on the line from Vancouver, British Columbia. Shachi, it's good to have you joining our discussion here. We've just been trying to figure out why the Prime Minister's numbers appear to be into somewhat of a reversal of fortune from a little over 2 years ago when he first got elected. You've been crunching numbers at Angus Reid. What have you come up with?
So he's spending down capital, Steve. This is a big part of it. I think it's important also to kind of rack back that time when he was elected. You talked about a wave of euphoria. In fact, what we see is that in the early stages after the election, after October of 2015, his approval numbers actually increased. They went up, they didn't go down, they didn't stay stable. So he banked some political capital and he's been spending it down. You saw some slippage and some spending of that political capital after the approval, for example, in British Columbia of the twinning of the Kinder Morgan pipeline. You saw a little bit more political capital spent down when the government reversed itself on the decision on electoral reform. Every time there's a decision, a little bit more of the base starts to feel less excited about, less inclined to approve of the job the Prime Minister's doing. To Andrew's point about trustworthiness and character, look, on these issues, what you find is that it's all relative, number one. They still find him trustworthy enough. Character-wise, well, there are some questions now being raised around entitlement versus is he a guy who's out there for me? The question on whether or not this government is the one out there swinging for the middle class is going to be one that Canadians continue to assess. The big issue, however, is we don't know if that's going to be the issue that voters ultimately make their decisions around come 2019.
Shachi, let me do a quick follow-up with you, and that is, I do recall when he was talking about his own financial circumstances, he used the expression in referring to them as, quote-unquote, my family fortune. I wonder how problematic the use of that expression was in trying to convey a sense that I'm on your side, middle-class Canada.
Look, I don't think if any voters really stopped to think about it in October of 2015, whether they really accepted or believed that this was just a regular guy. This was a guy doing campaign stops wearing very expensive watches. This is someone whose wife is always very stylishly put together, but is also wearing designer clothes, as is he. So this is not an issue that this particular politician has necessarily been able to make an articulate argument against it. Hey, I'm just a regular guy. So, of course, that sets up the contrast between Justin Trudeau and Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer is out there talking about how he rides the bus and how, you know, his family didn't have a car growing up and how he's the regular guy. Again, it does come down to whether or not this issue of regularity or I'm just an average Joe becomes the defining issue of the next election.
We'll get to the Leader of the Opposition in just a few moments, but I want to do one more thing here on the Prime Minister. Susan Riley, here's what you wrote in the Hill Times not too long ago. Trudeau remains an opaque figure. Is he an entitled rich boy with a low tolerance for dissent and a sharp temper, or a compassionate champion of the marginalized whose empathy is genuine and efforts sincere? There is evidence, though scant, of both tendencies, but which one predominates? Since you've asked the question in the piece, I'm going to ask you to answer it now here on TV.
Gee, I wish I knew. I don't know. When I'm watching him with survivals of residential schools, for example, or with any Indigenous group, with Gord Downie, I'm moved. I think his empathy is genuine, and it's rare in politics, and he doesn't seem to be ashamed to show his emotion. And I think, oh, this is a fundamentally very decent person whose heart is in the right place. On the other hand, when he pretends, and it's the pretense rather than going with to the Aga Khan's island, but when he claims that the Aga Khan was a close personal friend, and it turns out that that's not so much the case, I really think, who are you and what game are you playing? So I'm on both sides at the moment. And maybe he's both. I mean, it's quite possible that he contains multitudes, and he's both.
He's a weird mixture in another way of occasional sort of flower child naivete and then occasional just deep cynicism. And again, he contains multitudes. He's a complicated character that way.
What's the most egregious example of the deep cynicism that you just referred to?
Well, going back on electoral reform, for example, it's just, and the answers and the explanations of it are so shallow.
And the flower child naivete?
Praising Fidel Castro and his death, for example, without any acknowledgement of his barbaric human rights record.
Let me follow up by reading something, Sheldon. I'm at the top of page 4 here. Let's do this post-truth diet graphic here. This is from The Guardian. We live in a blog culture where it's pitched as a triumph of democracy that everyone can claim authority, which means anyone who says that, actually there is an objective truth, is condemned. Nothing proves this more starkly than the way celebrities have filled the vacuum where experts used to be. Because who appears to have more self-esteem than a celebrity? And so, people with popular Instagram accounts are trusted over registered dietitians, panel show politicians such as Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson are validated, and a reality TV star is elected president. Okay, I didn't want to get too political about this, but there it is in black and white. Okay, Abby, start us off here. Is clean eating a symptom of a post-truth culture?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is, because people are going now not for who's necessarily credible, but who offers the sexiest alternative solution to whatever ails them or whatever they think ails them.
Why is that a bad thing?
Because there's a lot of junk out there in terms of diet advice that people are trying to sift through. And, you know, there are certain celebrities who are very well known who are giving the worst diet advice, and sometimes maybe even harmful.
But if I want to be more like Gwyneth Paltrow, what's the harm?
You knew I was talking about her.
Well, I just inferred. Yeah. What's the harm?
Because you're not her. And the diet advice and most of the wellness advice that she gives is not well at all. Can be very dangerous and completely not based in science.
Tim, you prepared to go that far, that it could not just be dumb, but actually dangerous?
So I think that some of the things which are propagated by celebrities, by Instagram influencers, probably are dangerous. The idea of, a cleanse, the idea that you can lose a significant amount of weight by drinking, I think it's called Fit Tea, where Instagram celebs are paid anywhere between, I think it's $1,000, $25,000 a pop to advertise what is essentially just a diuretic. I think those things can be not just foolhardy, but can be dangerous if you're starving yourself, if you're undergoing various kinds of strictures on that basis. But I think the flip side of that is to say that there are some people who are talking an awful lot of sense, who have changed the lives of the people around them by the things that they've been saying. If you go on to, so my field of research is the social media site Reddit, and there are whole communities on there of people who are giving extremely level-headed, quite nuanced advice on how to do your own research about what you should be eating, how to treat your own body as a sort of experiment ground so that you are able to consume the things that work for you rather than just latching on to whatever the latest trend is. So whilst it might be true that someone like Gwyneth Paltrow is propagating nonsense, dangerous nonsense even, it's not the case that this is universally a bad phenomenon.
Kim, let me follow up in this regard. Is it well known by people who go to Instagram and check out all these pictures and listen to all of these social influencers? Is it well known that they're getting paid to offer those opinions?
I think it's pretty well known. It's hard for me to say because I'm just one person in the world of Instagram, so I don't know what's in the minds of everyone else. But I think Instagram is trying to make it more well known. I mean, I think they've put things in place where, you have to say that a post.
It's the law now, actually.
It's
there
sponsored.
Is a law.
Yeah.
If I post a sponsored post on Instagram where someone's paying me to say something, I have to put #ad. Yeah. So, but a lot of people
about 20 hashtags,
you're not even supposed to do that. It's the law that has to be above the fold, but a lot of people I've seen, especially celebrities, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I wonder whether people who are on Instagram a lot and take their cues from these people understand that there's a financial conflict of interest going on here.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on who the user is and how savvy they are in general. But I mean, I certainly see it, and I certainly see it in a lot of influencers who are just it's just one ad after the next. And for me, I think, well, then I wouldn't trust anything coming out of that account, because it's obviously everything is just done to be paid. Whereas, full disclosure, I've been sponsored to post things about brands that I use and love and trust. The whole thing is so interesting because we're just looking to everybody for answers in this food and chronic illness era that we're living in, whereas there was never a need for people like us before, dietitians, nutritionists, to guide people on their food journey, because we were so close to the food that we ate. We just knew what was working and what wasn't working. I mean, we might have had sanitation issues, but overall, a healthy diet was where you lived and it came from the earth and you knew what things looked like coming out of the ground. And now it's so confusing and we are so busy and there's so much convenience food and we've looked to packages and now we're in a pickle, you know, so we're looking to people for advice. And it's just such a big issue.
One of the controversial aspects of your book is what you have to say about vitamin and mineral supplements, and you think they ought to be part of the diet. And let's do a little excerpt from the book here. Although the food we eat is of fundamental importance, hardworking brains benefit from additional nutrients in the form of supplements to ensure optimal function and maintain brain health. You know there's a raging debate about whether supplements are any damn good at all.
Of course, I'm at the front line all the time.
Okay, so why have you weighed in as you have weighed in?
Well, I absolutely agree that diet is the most important thing. You could undermine the best supplement regime with poor diet. It's very easy to do that. But I do challenge the idea that there's sufficient of all the nutrients in the food. In fact, once I visited a supplement company that was owned by a drug company, and they had a poster up, I wish I had it now to show you, of the amount of food you'd have to eat to get the recommended daily intake of every essential nutrient. And it was like a big mountain of food. So there's that aspect of it. There's the fact that our brains will just, even if you tell us what nutrients are in what food, our brains can't compute it. And the third thing is it's becoming clear that now that we're beginning to image the brain, and I think we've learned more about the brain in the last 10 years since we could actually image functioning in real time than ever before. Now we can see, for example, experiments done in healthy, fit young men, no medication, no health problems at all, apparently fit, and presumably representative of the best part of our population. And when you stress them, put them under stress, intellectual stress in the laboratory, you can compare how their brains function if they're on nothing, a placebo, if they're on a regular multivitamin, which has the recommended daily allowance in it, or a special multivitamin that some researchers have been studying, which actually has 10 to 15 times the amount of B vitamins and vitamin C, etc. And you can show that they function better. Not only physically, but mentally.
Let me get Nalini's take on this. The advisability of taking a multivitamin every day. Your take.
We would really recommend that people consult their family doctors to see what's best for them, and we refer people to healthy sources of vitamins through foods, natural foods, and fruits and vegetables, and that sort of thing.
How do you handle your patients as it relates to advising them on supplements, vitamins, etc.?
Yeah, so part of the workup for dementias that doctors and others usually do is just actually take a look at, do you have deficiencies of certain minerals or vitamins or even metabolic disturbances such as diabetes or thyroid issues. If someone actually has, there's specific vitamin deficiencies we look for, like vitamin B12 deficiency is a classic one that's commonly associated with poor thinking and memory. And that's one where I'll actively prescribe vitamin B12 to be taken. But most people actually, their B12 is actually pretty good. So that's a person that I wouldn't actually prescribe B12. Now, if someone has a questionable diet, maybe not an ideal diet, and they say, Doc, what do you think? Should I take a multivitamin? I have no problems with that, but I also try and balance between the practicality of, you know, what is the quality of the vitamin, who's made it, and also, can you even afford that? Because for some of my folks, it's the difference between buying those vitamins or actually getting out to the local exercise program at the senior center or doing whatever else there is. So there's a lot of different things to consider, but I don't routinely prescribe vitamins, only if I have a compelling reason to do so.
You want the last word?
Well, B12 is a very good example because we have what we call the reference range for B12. How is that derived? From the population, mean and plus or minus 2 standard deviations. If you look at our reference range for B12, and by the way, there is no upper limit and no restriction on the amount of B12 you can take. If you look at measurements right bang slap in the middle of our normal range, there are studies following people from the age of 65 onwards. For 5 years, you can measure their brain shrinking, which is a precursor to dementia. So I really challenge the idea that we do get optimal amounts of the micronutrients from a casual diet, or even one that's more focused on colorful fruits and vegetables. I think we have a challenge there.
Again, we all know today that assault can be that, or it can be a punch in the jaw that breaks your jaw. That's a pretty big continuum.
It is.
What did you find on the continuum?
Well, I mean, I think both Margaret and I were horrified by the stories that we heard and how widespread and normalized violence has become within the healthcare system.
Normalized?
Normalized. And it's not just that we're saying that. That's well documented in the scientific literature, which is very robust on this issue. So we were hearing, I mean, almost all, and I mean all of the people we interviewed experience some form of abuse on a daily basis. And when we would ask them, well, you don't really mean daily. I mean, you're trying to, you know, give us a sense of what it is. They said, no, we mean daily. And that covers a whole continuum, as you said, from physical assault, which in some cases has been horrendous, to being punched, being kicked, having your arm grabbed, your body grabbed, private parts of your body grabbed, being verbally abused, being called names. You know, racialized workers are targeted, women are targeted, and so on, down to harassment and assault, sexual assault.
Is this so widespread that it literally happens in every hospital in the province?
I think it does happen in every hospital. I think there are some types of hospitals, some areas in the hospitals where it's more likely to happen. And again, this is, has been documented by other researchers. People working in mental health, people working in emergency departments, people working in dementia care are more likely to be subject to violence. But there are people working in acute care hospitals who would go in to talk to a patient and be grabbed. There are frustrations, there are all kinds of issues that are creating an atmosphere that is, it seems to be more stressful than it's ever been. You know, they talk about how this is a growing problem, and actually that that's something that we were trying to understand. Why is there more violence now than there was 20 years ago?
Well, let me follow up on that with Jim, because I wonder whether the violence is as a result of patients feeling generally mistreated in the healthcare system, or whether it is something specific to the nurse, the orderly, the whomever that they are dealing with on any particular issue. Do you have a better sense of that?
Well, I don't think that we can lay this problem at the doorstep of the healthcare staff. I don't think they're responsible. The victims, in a sense, are the responsible parties here. I think that there's been enormous restructuring of our healthcare system. The World Health Organization said 2 decades ago that you could never address the issue of violence in an under-resourced system. Everywhere we went, everywhere, the constant refrain was the tremendous burden of understaffing, the lack of resources to try to deal with prevention, simple things like buzzers, flagging, security, signs. I mean, in some hospitals, for instance, there was a sign in the food court saying zero tolerance of violence, and the nurses made point that that's not in there where they are working.
But to be clear, it's not that nurses or orderlies are doing anything wrong. They just happen to be sort of the frontline contact of the system, and therefore
that's right.
They're getting it.
That's right. They're the ones that are at the receiving end of this crisis. And it really made us realize, especially as occupational health researchers, really what is going on in this work environment for a second here. I mean, this very high demand, limited control, high pressure environment, It's a perfect cauldron, really, for a toxic work environment.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, January 19th, 2018. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety on our website, that's tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream on our Periscope page. That's periscope.tv/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.